the beginning of our journey into the light, the pursuit of truth to heal our historical wounds. Welcome to the AOA. Welcome to the new us. Enjoy. To those of you who are not familiar with this channel, on here I use videos from all around the world to show to you that everything we have been taught is nothing but a fabricated lie. They don't want us to know the truth.
I would like
So
to
here
start
we
this
go.
third chapter of this series of documentaries called Suomelle with a gigantic thank you to all of the viewers for the interest shown toward my videos, with amazing and very interesting comments and emails that help this project to grow, learn and continue. By the way, the second episode, called The Unknown Ancient Origins of the Finnish and Estonian Languages, that to me is having a staggering and unexpected success, had the problem with the copyright of the music, and the video was restricted in Germany and cannot be played with cell phone, tablets and console. But I will fix this situation as soon as possible by re-editing it with a different sound. But let's start introducing the new chapter, that to me is one of the most shocking, due to the fact that what I will present can change the perception of reality radically to those that haven't heard yet about its topics. The historical events presented to us since a young age from the educational institution as the only truth about our origins as humans have been manipulated and distorted almost beyond recognition. Through re-edition of ancient texts with adjustment, various changes in calendars, burning entire libraries, and imposing surrealistic theories, a parasitic society behind the scene create the version of sick reality that we are currently experiencing in this world, with endless and useless wars, unsolvable poverty and catastrophic environmental disaster that are leading us toward a very disturbing near future. It is a staged reality or an horrific fairy tale, the one that we are experiencing. And I won't lose any more time presenting this video, but I will start straight showing proof of this manipulation that brought us to forget how powerful the human species actually is, and to forget our true origins and past. A past when we were connected with our planet, nature and environment, a past without wars and famine, a past of freedom of expression. I take the occasion again to send a few words of support to the New Earth channel and their site megalith.org for spreading hope and knowledge. And as I did with the other chapters of this series, I will use as source of the images and most of information their work. And at the end of this video, I will present two of their documentaries that will give credit to what I will show you in this episode. On the screen at this moment, you can see a compilation of books written by the Russian mathematician Anatoly Fomenko and the New Chronology Project. By the way, you can order them for free. And at the bottom of this video, you have a link to their work on the web. In those books, you will find an enormous quantity of information about the chronological shift that I'm going to present you in the next few minutes. In the Middle Ages, if we were writing a date of a specific year, we would have used in front of it the letter I as synonymous of Jesus or Jesus, to make understand that a certain event have happened after Christ. On the screen you can see an example. Or the letter X, which was meaning Christos. So let's go check how this way of numbering the years was actually working in practice in that specific period of time. One of my passion is to collect maps of every kind. I have hundreds of them from all over the world, belonging to every period of time. And I will show you one of my favorite cartographers in absolute. His name is Abraham Ortelius. There is no doubt that his maps are accepted as authentic from every so-called historians and geographer throughout the world. In fact, using the main research engine in internet, we can find out clearly that he was born on 14th of April 1527 and he died on the 28th of June 1598, and that he was a Flemish cartographer and geographer, conventionally recognized as the creator of the first modern atlas, the Theatrum Orbis Terrarum, or Theater of the World. And I personally think that this name is the most adequate, because the world, as it is presented to us, is really a theater. He is also believed to be the first person to imagine that the continents were joined together before drifting to their present position. We can also see that the Encyclopedia Britannica gives us the same exact personal information. So let's investigate his magnificent works. The map shown on the screen is very baffling. It is considered to be a 1574 map of the world. So, examining it with a bit of logic, a question came to my mind immediately. It was made 82 years after the supposed discovery of America by this phantomatic figure called Cristoforo Colombo, and there are already all of the main rivers of South America painted with accuracy. And the idea that in few decades they could have mapped that remote area of the jungle is very fishy. But this is a subject that I will touch in a future episode. What is concerning to this investigation is the date, and as we go closer to it, we can see that in front of the number 574, there's an I or a J, synonymous of Jesus or Jesus. That's clearly not a 1. So is here 574, not 1574. But let's go check another cartographer. His name was Levinus Hulsius, and in his personal information we can read that he was born in Belgium in 1546. He was a maker and dealer of fine scientific instrument, publisher and printer, linguist and lexicographer. Wrote extensively on the construction of geometrical instruments. So also his jobs as cartographer are accepted as genuine, and also in this case, on the map shown on the screen, in front of the number 598, there is a very peculiar one. And actually, I have to say that to me, it is far to be a 1. But for all of the so-called historians, the date is 1598. But let's go investigate another cartographer from the same period. His name is Nicolaes van Gelkerken. Again, we can see that he is considered an authentic cartographer, and the date on his maps are very clear. On the left side of this particular work, we can see that there are 3 dates. One is 499, with an I or a J in front. The second one is 579, also with a J or an I in front of it. And the third is 587, again clearly with an I or a J before it. On the right side of the map, we can again see the year, which is actually the date of the map itself, and in front of the number 632, there is a clear I or J. But in all of these four cases, the translation to official history books done by historians, that I or J are transformed into a 1. So at this point a question rises along. What is going on here? There's actually many centuries completely added to the real historical events. Precisely, they are 1000 fabricated years, as the New Earth Channel called them. But before taking any conclusion, I will give you more proof that these are not just a couple of mistakes in writing dates done by lunatic cartographers, but that it is actually, and without any doubt, an organized and manufactured time shifting, or a staged and planified manipulation of the real timeline, made by parasitic psycho-illusionists to trick us and to distort our perception of historical events. As we can observe in this old emblem of the beautiful city of Vilnius in Lithuania, the age that the capital belonged to is the 7th century. It is very clear. You can see the number 7 on the left side of the emblem. But according to the history presented to us worldwide by all of the institutions, educational, economical, art, sport, and so on, the city, as we can read on the screen, belonged to the 14th century. It is just unreal. But let's take another example. Ludwig von Schlosser was a German historian who, as we can read, laid the foundation for the critical study of the Russian history. And we will later come back on this critical study of history done by German historians. But let's continue with this personal information. As we can read, they are assuring us that he was born July the 5th, 1735, and died September 9th, 1809. It is clearly written 1735 years after Jesus Christ. But if we go check how he was depicted in history, under his name we can clearly read the date of his birth in I 735. That's an I, not a 1. There's no doubt about it. But let's go back in time. In this image, we can see the illustration of the Lugduni Batavorum of Ludovici Elzeviri. If again we go check the time period which it belonged to, according to the main research engine in internet, it is clearly written that it is the end of the 1500. But if we go closer to the date represented in the previous image, we can clearly see that before the number 595, again there is the letter I of Jesus, not the number 1 of 1000. There's even a dot separating the I representing the time period after Jesus Christ and the rest of the date. In the next few seconds, I will show you some of the endless examples of this fabricated 1000 years on images courtesy of the New Earth Channel. We cannot trust the history presented to us. At this point, many question rises. How were the people at that time blinded and forced to accept this time shifting? How the society could have been manipulated to simply accept 1000 staged years? Because we have to keep in mind that in those times there was a lot of brilliant minds walking on this earth. In fact, also the physicist, mathematician and philosopher Sir Isaac Newton understood this chronological distortion, and he wrote chronicles about it. On the screen, we can appreciate one of his works, done to unmask this falsified historical timeline. It's called the Chronology of Ancient Kingdom Amended, and he theorized that the Greek Empire was artificially sent back in time 534 years, the Romans 1000 years, and the ancient Egyptian with 1800 years. But the main reason why the common people just accept these invented or staged centuries is that they just could not understand what was going on, because conveniently, exactly in that specific period of time, the calendar was changed into the new falsified or adjusted Gregorian calendar. So people were forced to accept the new chronology. It is almost diabolical. They have tricked us, fooled us. These parasitic psycho-illusionists, they have distorted the perception of our own history, making us think that it is thousands of years that there's wars and conflict, giving us the sensation of impotence, looking at the sick current events that we are living in these days, making us think that it has always been like this, that the human species is thousands of years experiencing these social problems. Right after the publication of this chapter of Suomelle, I will publish a video done by the New Earth channel about these 1000 fabricated years. Please go look at it. It is beautiful. I hope that life will always help the people behind that project, because their purpose is to spread hope and knowledge. Thank you for what you are doing. But let's now connect these disgusting lies to the historical panorama of Finland. It is now a long time that I have realized this chronological mess, thanks to the studies of Anatoly Fomenko and the New Chronology Project. Again, I repeat that at the bottom of this video, there's a link to their job on the web. Please go consult it to have tons of more proof about this parasitic time distortion. And in the last few months, I came out with one conclusion. If there's so many centuries added to the real historical timeline, so there's literally thousands of events that never happen, and hundreds of thousands of people that never exist. So I started studying the genealogy of important historical figures. And I don't even start talking about Spain, England or France, where entire genealogies of emperors and families are repeated over and over to fill up this phantom time. Also because I can give you just a short overview of the situation in this video that otherwise would be 3 hours long. But I will choose just one person because of the topic of the previous chapter of this series of documentaries, which is the Finnish language. His name is Mikael Olavi, more known as Mikael Agricola. Moi! I would like to start the second part of this video, which is the continuation of the third chapter of the series of documentaries called Suomelle, with the title Mikael Agricola, History or Fiction. Again, with a thank you to everybody. The numbers of viewers from literally all over are growing much faster than what I could imagine even in the most optimist prevision. And I take the occasion to say to the listener that the purpose of this series is to try to put order in the historical mess presented to us as the only truth. And I hope not to offend anyone with my personal opinion about various topics. As I said at the end of part 1, we will touch a subject that for the Finnish people may have a very important meaning, which is the life and achievement of an historical person of great importance in the recent past of the entire country. His name was Mikael Olavi, more known as Mikael Agricola. I will not add any personal conclusions about the existence of this person because of the importance that he had in the Finnish history and literature, having entire days and churches dedicated to him. Talking about the church named in his honor, found in Helsinki, called Mikael Agrikolan Kirkko, the Finnish researcher Unlinked Bird spoke personally in front of me on the phone with the people working in it, trying to fix an appointment to present our studies and talk with some expert about the life of Mikael Agricola. And with enormous surprise, they told us that the church does not have anything to do with this emblematic person, and they don't even know why the church is calling this way. These are the original words and answer that we had. I'm not making it up. So, I will show to the viewers what I could find out about his genealogy. I have chosen a site that presents the family tree of literally millions of people, and it is one of the most visited in internet, with thousand upon thousand of research daily. To make understand that also in the case of Mikael Agricola, the picture is at least foggy. For the personal information of Mikael Agricola, I will use again the main research engine in internet, because everywhere I go, this is the first result that we have, and people tend to use the easiest way for answers. If we go read his biography, under early life, we learn that his name was Mikael Olavi, or Mikkel Olofsson. He was born in Uusimaa, in the village of Torsby in Pernaja, Sweden, now Finland, around the year 1510. The exact date of his birth, like most detail of his life, is unknown. He had 3 sisters, but their names are not known. His teachers apparently recognize his aptitude for languages, and his rector sent him to Viborg, our-day Russia, for Latin school. If we continue reading, under his studies we can learn that when Mikael studied in Viborg, he assumed the surname Agricola, farmer or agriculture. But this translation is incorrect, because the word Agricola is a title added, for example, to a farm or a company, like Azienda Agricola. Azienda means company. But let's continue his studies. The Viborg castle was ruled by a German count, Johann. In 1536, he was sent to study in Wittenberg, Germany. At this point, I will ask the listener to go study all of his achievement. For example, the translation of the New Testament into Finnish. Because once he has to fit in the historical panorama presented to us, plenty of information are suddenly available. But I will add just one question. Under his studies, we can read that once in Germany he concentrated on the lecture of Philip Melanchthon, who was an expert in Greek, the original language of the New Testament. And in 1537 he started translating the New Testament into Finnish. So how is it possible that in just 1 year he could read and translate Greek language even if his scholastic background was Latin? I mean, I personally speak 5 languages and I have knowledge and diplomas of at least another 2. Unlinked Bird speak 3 with an enormous understanding of a 4th one, and the Canadian researcher Verbaholic speak almost perfectly 4 with knowledge even of Arab. So we know a bit what it means learning new languages. Michael Agricola, learning Greek in 1 year, was a genius. But let's continue. Basically, we don't know anything about the early life of this person, but we don't know much about his death either. And the exact place of his grave, supposedly in Viborg Church, is not known. Only after he goes to Germany, a lot of information appear influencing the history of the country of Finland. What it is also interesting is that on the screen we can see some picture of statues in his honor, in various locations, like in Viborg. But they are all belonging to the 19th and 20th century. So we don't know anything about him, but 400 years later they remember his physiognomy enough to make a statue of him. And also the monument on the chosen place of death is very recent. Actually, I would like to talk a bit about this mysterious lack of old graves. Few months ago, I was living in New England, United States, precisely in the state of Vermont. Beautiful, by the way, with very awesome people living there, to study this mystery of giant bones and skeletons found throughout the area. By the way, I have only found humans with gigantic hearts. And of course, the first place to start for clues are old cemeteries. Well, with surprise, I have discovered that they either being relocated in recent time, or they simply lack of old graves. I mean, you can find graves belonging to the 19th century, not older, but even that one, they look much younger than actually that period of time, observing the erosion on the stone used. I found it very peculiar. Few weeks later, when I went back to Canada, the New Earth Channel published the work of a guy called Faris Eshaer. At the bottom of this video, I put the link to his research. And I was shocked to discover that the guy was asking the same question to himself. He actually started looking at the West Balkan area of Europe, in particular the country of Croatia, and surprise, the 33 cemeteries found in the capital, Zagreb, are all belonging to the 19th century. He could not find any older grave than that period. So while I was studying Finland history for this series of documentaries, I started investigating the old graves that I could find in this area of the world. And surprise, all of the so-called old cemeteries are from the 20th century. What, people, they were not dying before. And all of the graves that I saw from the 19th century, they have very recent looking, let's say few decades. But in Finland, they give us another reason for this mystery. As we can read on the screen, from the Genealogical Society of Finland official website, cemetery records are not usually used in genealogical research in Finland, because there are death records in the church books of most parishes. About 40 cemeteries have been published in the yearbook of the Genealogical Society of Finland. Most of them are from parishes where church records were destroyed. But let's continue reading. Graves are sometimes destroyed by parish authorities because of economical reasons. Economical reasons? What could it mean? But here comes the best part. Many of the old graves had wooden grave markers which have disappeared because of natural causes. I'm never gonna believe it. This is a lie. I know very well how Finnish people know their land and the weather condition of Finland, and they are very clever at the time of building in consequence of the strong winter condition that the country have to pass through every year. In fact, the old houses have stone blocks under, then the wood house built on top, to avoid the contact with the snow. Otherwise the base would be rotten in few decades. So the idea that they would put wood marker on top of the deceased familiar, that after few years they would look rotten, is disconnected to reality and an offense to the knowledge of building of our ancestors. But I will talk in details about this topic in a future episode. For the moment, let's continue with the written language subject. Now I will just add a short overview about the Estonian version of their written language. I will use again the main research engine in internet. Under history, we can read that the oldest written records of the Finnic language of Estonia date from the 13th century, Originates Livoniae. In Chronicle of Henry of Livonia contains Estonian place names, words, and fragment of sentences. And under Estonian literature, we can read that the first extant Estonian book is a bilingual German-Estonian translation of the Lutheran Catechism, dating to 1535. But what is interesting is that the earliest extant sample of connected Estonian are the so-called Kullamaa prayers, dating from 1524 and 1528. In 1525, the first book published in Estonian language was printed. The book was a Lutheran manuscript, which never reached the reader and was destroyed immediately after publication. So let's make some logical conclusions. The Estonians were starting to write down their language already in the 13th century. By the way, 3 centuries before the Finnish, which I don't believe. Then they forgot how to write for 300 years, and 12 years before then Mikael Agricola started writing down the Finnish language under the control of German institution to be sure that it's like they want, Estonian published their version of Lutheranism, but something was not fitting properly the historical version that they want, so they destroyed the book and they come out with a bilingual German-Estonian version of the Lutheranism that was more convenient. Do you remember in the first part of this video when I showed you Ludwig von Schlosser, personal information, and it was written that he laid the foundation for the critical study of the Russian history? Well, again, we have history modified by German historians. But we will come back a third time on this subject later in this video. For the rest, I really would like to know what was written in the destroyed book. And I have to say that there's nothing strange to me about forgetting how to write for a few hundred years, because I keep forgetting how to write some words like foggy or fishy, but I can open any history book to remind me of the meaning and origin of those words, along with another amazing one, fiction. But as I said in the first part of this video, a good way to understand if a particular person had existed in reality or was part of this hundred of thousands of phantomatic figure needed to fill up those small 1000 years of lies is to follow his genealogy. So let's start with the one of Mikael Agricola. Born, we don't know, let's say around 1507. Immediate family, son of Olof Simonsson. So let's go check Olof Simonsson. Birth date. Estimated between 1442 and 1502. Those are only 60 years margin of error. Plus, in the case that he was born in 1502, he was 5 years old when he became father of Michael, and his death, date and location unknown. Pretty murky. So let's go back to Michael Agricola, husband of Brigitta Olofsdotter. So he's son of Olof, and she's Olofsdotter. It doesn't mean anything, but it is at least bizarre. Let's go check out this Brigitta Olofsdotter. Birth date estimated between 1481 and 1541, and her death, date and location unknown. Plus, immediate family, daughter of Olof. And as you can see on the screen, is not that we can learn much about this Olof. Let's also say that in the scenario of her being born in 1481, she would have married Michael Agricola, having almost 30 years more than him. Interesting. But as we can see, Michael was not the only love of Brigitta, because she got remarried with Henrik Jakobson. So even if he doesn't have nothing to do with Michael Agricola bloodline, let's go check his life. Died in 1588, husband of Brigitta Olofsdotter. Nothing else. So let's go back to Michael Agricola. As we can see here in immediate family, it is written that he was brother of this three phantom named sister, which surname is Olofsdotter, like his wife. And if you go check, the three of them have the same result. Nothing. But definitely the road to follow is his son, due to the fact that Michael Agricola became pretty important and known even to the royal Swedish family before his death. So he was no longer an unknown birthday kid, and his son must have been registered and followed in more recent documents. Continuing with the immediate family, in fact, we can read that was father of Christian Agricola, birth date December 11, 1550. And here the situation became even more hilarious due to the fact that in the scenario of the mother, Brigitta, being born in 1541, Christian's mother was only 9 when she had him. Interesting. As I said at the beginning of the video, I hope not to offend anyone with my personal comment, but these are very simple equations. So let's continue with Christian Agricola. Birthplace, Turku, Western Finland. Died February 19, 1586, in Tallinn, Estonia. Immediate family, husband of Elin Persdotter Fleming. Let's go investigate a bit her branch. Also, she got remarried with Hans Johansson Stølarm, who was son of Johan Olofsson Stølarm and Ragnhild Persdotter Allongren. So again, son of Olof, I imagine that was an extremely uncommon name at the time, and son of Persdotter, and married a Persdotter. No comment are needed. Also interesting is his birth date, that in case he was born in 1529, the father, Johan Olofsson Stølarm, that was born without any margin of error in 1524, would have been 5 years old. Cool. And very interesting is that if we go check the father of Johan, who was Olof Eriksson Stølarm, he was son again of an Olofsdotter, and he was married again with a Fleming. But let's go back to Christian Agricola. We can find out that he was father of only one daughter, Britta Christiandotter Agricola. So after only one generation, the surname Agricola disappeared from history because her daughter could not pass on the family name. And this scenario is a very common in the various genealogical research that I've done throughout Europe. After one generation, just 1 or 2 daughters, so the surname is gone. But it could be only coincidences. So let's go check out this Britta Agricola. Again, we can see a very large estimated birth date between 1555 and 1611. Again, we can see too short or long time period between birth date of father and daughter, which would lead to an unrealistic genealogical picture. Christian Agricola, the father, was born without any margin of error in 1550. I let you make the calculation, no comment are needed. Please go check the branch of her husband, because it is fantastic, but I don't have the time in this video to present it. But let's just make it faster and try to get to our goal, which is to find a relative that we can clearly prove his existence with some document in more recent time. Let's concentrate generation after generation, keeping in mind at this point that the surname Agricola has already ended. So Britta Agricola was mother of Karl Svinhufvud af Gvalstad. And as we can see, generation after generation, we cannot have a real birth date, and everything is estimated in a period of 60 years. Birth date estimated between 1580 and 1640. Let's continue with his daughter, Britta Katarina Svinhufvud af Gvalstad. Again, no real birth date, and mother of Johan Pendrich and Ebba Pendrich. At this point, the genealogical tree split in two. If we follow Johan Pendrich, whose exact birth date, surprise, is unknown, we discover that is father of Martha Beata Pendrich. At this point, Martha's birthday is around the 1700. No other information, and there are no more son or daughter to continue the bloodline. Let's try the other branch of Ebba Pendrich, whose birthday, guess, is unknown. Date and location of death, unknown. Mother of Maria Elisabeth von Ofdal, whom again doesn't have any birth date and unknown date and location of death. And at this point the tree split again in two, with Frederick Otto Bilberg and Ulrika Christina Bilberg, whom in both cases no other descendant can be traced. Now, I'm sure that dedicating a much more extended research on the subject, other information about his genealogy will be discovered. But the main point, to me, remained that again and again I'm proving myself that in the 15th, 16th or 17th centuries, everything is very foggy. I love this word because it describes exactly how our supposed history looked to me. Every person that I choose to research for historical purposes have the same result, everything unknown. But let's now change the subject, even if the next topic is still related to the origins of the Finnish language. Let's check out what was going on at the same time when Mikael Agricola was writing down the Finnish language in neighboring countries. Moi! I would like to start the third part of the documentary called Stage Centuries, which belong to the series of videos titled Suomelle, with a few words of gratification to all of the viewers for the support shown toward this project. I keep receiving very beautiful emails, especially from people who got to the same conclusion with me, that there's a deliberate agenda in to hide information about the history of the country of Finland and the group of Finnic and Uralic in general languages. And this series is dedicated to research deeply the reason of such manipulation of knowledge and free Finnish culture from its capture. What shocked me the most about this series of documentaries is the number of viewers that receive daily. I mean, I personally don't have any social network. I don't have a computer. The one I'm using belongs to the Finnish researcher Unlinked Bird, which is every day more and more becoming the core of this project. And I don't even have a phone. So my videos are just there. I cannot believe the power of the viewers that share them and like them. I really want to dedicate all of my works to you. Life creation is of the viewers even more than mine. But let's now start this third and last part of the video with a question. Have you ever heard of Great Tartaria? It is now long time that I present this question to literally hundreds of people of every age, culture or background, and really only few have an affirmative answer, which is very surprising in the case of Finnish people, because until just few hundred years ago, this enormous nation or country of Eurasia called Tartaria was just next door, and it was actually including the entire Urals mountain area, which, as we have learned in the previous episode, is where the Finnic group of languages have its origins. And the idea that at school in Finland they forget to teach to the kids that the largest empire of all was their neighbor is at least fishy. So let's start investigate a bit this small forgotten Finnish neighbor. I will start as usual with the first response from the main research engine in internet, because as I said in the previous part of this video, people tend to use the first answer believing that it is also the most correct and checked. Tartari, Latin Tartaria, or Great Tartary, Latin Tartaria Magna, was a name used from the Middle Ages until the 20th century to designate the great tract of northern and central Asia, stretching from the Caspian Sea and the Ural Mountains to the Pacific Ocean, inhabited mostly by Turkic people after the Mongol invasion. It incorporates the current areas of Pontic Caspian Steppe, Volga Urals, Caucasus, Siberia, Turkestan, Mongolia, and Manchuria. And I will read you one more quote. As the Russian Empire expanded eastward and more of Tartary became known to the Europeans, the term fell into disuse. Basically, that so-called historians are telling us that Tartaria is actually no country, but a name for land of nomad tribes that were known badly by cartographers until the 19th century. But in the 16th century, just few decades after the discovery of America, the same cartographer, they were able to map all of the main rivers of the jungle of South America, as I showed you in the previous part of this video. So Tartaria was a name for undiscovered areas of the North and Central Asia. On the screen at this moment, we can observe a series of maps made by the cartographer Abraham Ortelius. And I will use again his works, because I already proved in the previous part that his maps are considered genuine and authentic by all of the historians. And as we can see on this particular work from 1592, Tartaria is actually pretty well mapped and known. There's all the rivers, forests, towns. Actually, to me, Finland, it looked much less discovered than Tartaria. I don't think that is so difficult to see that in the 16th century, those lands were pretty well known to the Western cartographer. But the so-called historians, they just can't realize it. They are assuring us that Tartaria is a name for undiscovered landmass. I'm sorry, I hope not to offend anyone, but a person really don't wanna see it to miss it. I will let you enjoy few geographical works from some very respected cartographers of the 16th, 17th, and all the way to the 19th century, representing this enormous nation or country. No comment are needed. By the way, at the bottom of this video, I have posted a link to literally hundreds of maps representing Tartaria. But now let's go check what the Encyclopedia Britannica, which is a very respected encyclopedia, was telling us about this unknown and undiscovered land of nomad tribes already in 1771. Keeping in mind that today historians are assuring us that Tartaria was not a country and has never been a country, so we don't need to study it at school. On the screen, I will show you that the encyclopedia was even mentioning the various types of Tartars. So, Tartary, a vast country in the northern part of Asia, bounded by Siberia on the north and west. This is called Great Tartary. So also the Encyclopedia Britannica 245 years ago was clearly telling us that Tartaria was a vast country. But today historians, they don't know about this small detail. It is just unreal. But let's continue. The Tartars, who lie south of Muscovy and Siberia, are those of Astrakhan, Circassia and Dagestan, situated northwest of the Caspian Sea. The Uzbek Tartars and Mogus, who lie north of Persia and India. The Kalmuk Tartars, who lie between Siberia and the Caspian Sea. And lastly, those of Tibet, who lie northwest of China. Let's now talk just a bit about the Great Wall of China. At the bottom of this video, I posted a link to the work of the New Earth channel on this topic. Historians and the main research engine in internet, they are assuring us that the construction of the Great Wall of China was an ongoing project that lasts for thousands of years. And its purpose, as we can read on the screen, was to protect the Chinese state and empires against the raids and invasion of the various nomadic groups of the Eurasian steppe. And here they give us the various dates of the construction of the wall, starting with the 7th century BC, then the 2nd century BC, and the most recent part, which date from the 13th till the 17th century. But as we can observe on these images, the wall, to me, look very recent. The erosion on the structure does not match the thousands of years of the supposed construction time. In fact, I cannot find the Great Wall of China in any old map predating the end of the 1600s. And more interesting is that in the diaries of the merchant traveler Marco Polo, which life belonged, as we can see on the screen, to the 13th and 14th century, there's no mention of this Chinese wonder. And the idea that he could have missed to notice a structure of that size is disconnected from reality. It's more logical to think that it wasn't there, like all of the maps until the 16th century clearly prove. And also its defensive purpose are very fishy, due to the fact that pass under hills where enemy could easily attack the Chinese army, showering them with arrows, and the entrance to the wall are facing south toward China, but in many places also north toward the supposed enemy lands. But please go look at the documentary of the New Earth channel that I have posted at the bottom of this video, which cover in details all of this foggy question. By the way, on the screen, you can see an illustration of Marco Polo wearing Tartar's outfit, and the emblems in the background are those of Tartaria. But I will continue giving you proof that the historians of our days are just copy-pasting foggy information one with another and parroting it to the student in the various universities. On the screen at this moment, you can see the genealogy of the various rulers of Tartaria. So these nomad tribes, they even have a genealogical tree for their emperors. It is incredible. But of course, a no-country land have its own flags, it is obvious. And the flags of Tartaria, they even appear on American Encyclopedia in the late 1800s, as you can see on the screen. I will let you enjoy some images showing mention in books, emblems and flags of this undiscovered no-country land in images courtesy of the New Earth channel. One of my best friends, which is actually more than a father for me, was the professor of history and philosophy of the University of Rome, Italy, now jubilated. By the way, he can read and translate various ancient languages, for example Greek and Latin. And when we were living together in Africa many years ago, he taught me to go research by myself everything that I'm interested of in life, and not copy pasting information just because somebody with a big or important name said it. And I have learned this also with many German scholars in Canary Island, Spain, my home, that they have refused to teach in schools because of the lack of credibility of the topics that they should have presented in the various educational institutions. And they have chosen to live a simple but full of knowledge life. On the screen you can appreciate some photograph that I personally took years ago when I was living in the African desert. And I would like to dedicate it to all of those people that search for answers and truth. So let's try to understand why this gigantic country or nation was eradicated from our recent history books. As we have learned in the first part of this episode of Suomelle, what this parasitic society behind the scene want is lowering the human consciousness and us to think that it is thousands of years that there's wars and conflict, that it is thousands of years that civilization after civilization humans were fighting and killing each other. And the idea that until few centuries ago there was a unified and peaceful society of the size of Tartaria was very disturbing for their agenda. So what they did, as with all of the rest of our history, was burning and destroy every proof and account of such society. On the screen you can see a couple of examples of how they were presenting the Tartars in the Western Europe as monsters eating human flesh and drinking blood. It is very easy with propaganda to twist the mind of entire societies. We are currently experiencing one of the biggest examples of this. But it could not be enough. So let's send again German historians to take care of the critical studies of the Russian history, like in the case of Ludwig von Schlosser, as we have learned in the first part of this video, and as they did with the Finnish and Estonian written language. On the screen at this moment, you can see the names of the historians working in Russia in the 18th and 19th century. No comment are needed. They are all from Germany. And in the next two graphics, we can see the presence of foreigner in those centuries and charged to write down the Russian history. They are almost 100%. For more detailed proof of what I'm presenting you, please watch the video about Tartaria of the New Earth channel that I will publish right after this chapter of Suomelle. It is just amazing. But please go visit their site megaliths.org and the beautiful New Earth.